The phone rings, its sound slicing through the silence of the morning. Amy stares at the screen, her heart skipping a beat. It's a number she and Amy had never been one to jump at the sound of her phone ringing. Of life at Heartland, where every day was a mix of horses, training, and the steady rhythm of ranch life. But today was different. Today the ring felt heavier, as if the weight of what was coming hung in the air. She was in the kitchen, sipping her coffee, her eyes absent-mindedly scanning the newspaper. It was a quiet morning, the kind that would normally slip by without much thought. But as the phone lit up with an unknown number, Amy felt something shift in the pit of her stomach. She glanced at the screen, her heart thudding against her chest. The name was familiar, but distant. It was the last person she thought would be calling her today. Ty? It had been months since she'd heard from him. Months since that awful day when he left, when everything changed. Their goodbye was painful, but it had been necessary, or so she told herself. He had his own path, and Amy had to respect that, even if it hurt. She had stayed behind, tending to Heartland, keeping the legacy alive, raising the horses that had always been a part of her. She couldn't go back. She couldn't let herself. But now, here it was, his name, staring back at her from the screen. Her finger hovered over the screen for a long moment. 8? She didn't know what to do. Her mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, each one more impossible than the last. Why was he calling now? What did he want? What had happened to him? More importantly, was she ready for whatever this call might bring? She took a deep breath and answered the call, her voice shaky despite her best efforts to sound calm. Hello? For a moment, there was nothing but silence on the other end, a long pause that seemed to stretch on forever. Amy could feel her heart beating faster, as if the universe itself had stopped, waiting for the next words. Finally, the voice she had missed so much filled her ear. It was rough, tired, but unmistakably his. Amy, it's Ty. I need your help. I don't know how long I have. The words hit her like a wave, crashing into her chest with such force that she could barely breathe. She had to sit down, her legs going weak beneath her. She wanted to scream, to cry, to ask him why. Why now? Why after everything? But instead, she stayed silent, her mind spinning, trying to process what she had just heard. Ty needed her. But what did that mean? What had happened to him? Why hadn't he reached out? Before now? Her fingers gripped the phone tighter, the plastic cold against her skin. But it felt like it was the only thing holding her together at that moment. Amy? Ty's voice sounded softer now, as if he knew the weight of what he had just said. Please, I need you. Amy swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. She could feel her heart breaking all over again, remembering everything they had been through. She had to be strong. For him. For herself. I'm here, Ty. What happened? She managed to whisper. His next words were heavy with urgency, filled with something she couldn't quite place. I don't know if I can explain everything right now, but I need you to come. Need you to help me, Amy. I don't know what's coming next, but it's bad. It's really bad. Amy's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, anger, fear. She wanted to know everything, but a part of her was terrified of what the truth might be. But she couldn't turn away now. Ty was asking for help. No matter what had happened between them, no matter how much time had passed, she couldn't leave him hanging. The silence that followed was deafening. Neither of them spoke, both caught in the enormity of the moment. The past seemed to come rushing back, filling the spaces between their words, but neither of them said it out loud. Neither of them could. Amy closed her eyes, taking another deep breath. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. She had to help him. She had to go, no matter the cost, whatever it was that had brought Ty back into her life. She had to face it head on. Okay, she said finally, her voice steady, though the tremor in it betrayed the fear she felt inside. I'll come, but tell me where you are. Ty let out a sigh of relief, and for a brief moment, Amy could hear the faintest hint of the Ty she remembered, the one she had fallen in love with. But the relief was short-lived as the weight of what was about to happen hung in the air between them, unspoken but clear. Thank you, he whispered. I'll explain everything when you get here. Just hurry. And with that, the call ended. Amy stood up, her legs feeling unsteady, her mind a swirl of emotions. She had a decision to make, and she had no idea where it would lead. But one thing was certain: her life was about to change again. Ever thought she'd see again? It's a call that could change everything. The call had ended too quickly, leaving Amy standing there, still holding the phone like it was the only tether to a world she had almost forgotten. Her mind spun, the quiet of the ranch wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She was motionless for a long moment, unable to think clearly, until the quiet was shattered by the distant sound of hooves clopping on the gravel. The world felt so still, but in her mind, everything was anything but. Amy's hand instinctively reached for the worn photo on the counter, a picture that she had kept tucked away for so long, afraid to look at it. In the photograph, Ty was smiling at her, his eyes bright and full of hope, that familiar sparkle in his gaze that she hadn't seen in months. The photo was taken during one of their happiest days, back when they had dreams of a future together. A future that now felt so distant, so unreachable. She set the picture down and moved to the window, watching the horizon, the endless fields. Stretching before her, the wind stirred the tall grass, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time had reversed, as though she could step back into that world before everything changed. But reality was too sharp, too painful. The wind carried. With it the scent of the ranch, the earthy smell of the horses, the sweet scent of hay. It was so familiar it almost made her feel at peace. Almost. But the memories flooded in. Uninvited and relentless. Ty. She remembered their first meeting like it was yesterday. The way he had walked into Heartland, his quiet confidence mixed with a certain sadness. He hadn't needed to speak much for her to know that there was something special about him, something that made him stand apart from everyone else. She had felt drawn to him immediately, a magnetic pull she couldn't explain. Then came the days spent working side by side, feeding the horses, fixing fences, and walking the ranch's vast fields. Their connection had been simple, easy. There was no pressure, just two people learning about each other in the way that only those who work together can. And then the conversations in the evenings. Sitting around the fire after a long day, talking about everything and nothing. Ty had opened up to her, slowly at first, sharing bits and pieces of his past, his struggles, his hopes, his quiet dreams. And Amy had listened, letting him know through small gestures that he didn't have to carry those burdens alone. The connection between them had deepened without either of them forcing it. It was just ... right? She had never felt that way before, so at ease, so understood. And then there was the day they had talked about their future, their dreams of running the ranch together. Ty had looked at her with those eyes that could hold so much and had said, "We're going to make this work. Together, Amy, you and me." Amy let out a shaky breath, her hand resting against the window pane, the glass cool against her skin. Those words that promised they had meant everything. To her, they had been the foundation of their world, of the plans they had shared. But nothing in life ever stayed that simple, did it? Her thoughts shifted, taking her back to the day Ty had left. It had been a morning much like this one, the sun still rising and painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange. She had been in the barn, feeding the horses, when Ty had walked. In carrying a duffel bag, she remembered the look on his face, the tension, the words he couldn't say, the things he wouldn't admit. The truth had been there, hanging in the air between them, and neither of them had wanted to face it. But it had been unavoidable. "I have to go," he had said, his voice tight, like he was holding something back. "I can't stay, Amy. I can't be the person you need me to be right now." Amy had stood frozen, unable to breathe, the words cutting into her like 1,000 knives. She hadn't understood then. Why had he left? What had changed? She had tried to hold on to him, to make him see reason, but in the end, it had been too late. Ty had walked out of Heartland, and a part of her had died with him. That day had been a turning point. She had fought to stay strong, to keep Heartland running without him. But in the quiet moments, She had felt his absence like a gaping hole. And yet, life had carried on. The horses had needed her. The ranch had needed her. And she had needed to move forward, even if it meant moving on from Ty. But now, hearing his voice on the phone, asking for help, those feelings she had buried came rushing back. The questions that had haunted her for months began to resurface. What had happened to him? Where had he gone? Why hadn't he reached out sooner? And why, after everything, was he calling her now? Amy's fingers clenched into fists, the intensity of the emotions flooding her overwhelming. The well-known. She had spent so much time trying to rebuild her life, trying to create a future that didn't include Ty. She had thought she was stronger than this. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of hooves again, this time louder, closer. She turned, but the view from the window offered her no answers, only more questions. The past was a weight she couldn't escape, and Ty's call had Jatha. House felt empty, even though Amy wasn't alone. She had always believed that Heartland was her anchor, the place that kept her grounded, no matter what chaos or heartache the world threw her way. But right now, as she stood in the kitchen staring out at the open fields, it felt like the walls were closing in on her. The phone call with Ty had left a bitter taste in her mouth, and now, more than ever, she had to confront the hardest decision she had ever faced. Amy rubbed her temples, the stress of the situation pulling at her every nerve. Ty needed her. That was clear. But how could she help him when she wasn't sure if she could even help herself? The past was a maze she had spent months trying to escape, and now it was drawing her back in. Whether she was ready or not, she took another glance at the phone, still resting on the counter where she had left it after the call ended. It was an unspoken reminder of the uncertainty now looming over her. Every part of her knew that walking away from this was impossible, but that didn't make it easier. If anything, it made the choice even harder. She chose to go to him, to help him. She was opening a door she wasn't sure she could close again. Her mind raced as she thought of everything she had built since Ty left. The ranch was thriving. She had made progress in her own life. She had learned to stand on her own 2 feet again, even if it meant doing so without him. But now, all those achievements felt fragile, like they could crumble the moment she stepped back into his world. What if it wasn't just Ty who was asking for help? What if the life they once shared would return, and with it, the weight of everything they had been through? The thought made her stomach twist. It wasn't just the ranch or the horses she had to think about. It was her heart. Could she really go back to the girl she was when Ty was by her side? Could she go back to the way he had made her feel, when everything was uncertain, but their love had been so sure? Her hand hovered over the phone again. Should I call him back? Him explained. The idea of seeing Ty again, of hearing his voice and understanding what had brought him back into her life, made her heart ache. I had longed for answers, for closure, things she thought she would never get. But in that same breath, she feared the answers might be more than she could handle. Amy walked to the window, gazing at the rolling hills of Heartland stretching out before her. The morning light glinted off the surface of the water in the nearby pond, and for a fleeting moment, the world felt peaceful again. But that peace was fleeting, and the reality of the situation rushed back in like a storm. What if helping him meant giving up everything she had worked so hard for? The ranch, the horses, her independence. It wasn't just her past with Ty. She was risking it was her future, too. She had always dreamed of running the ranch on her own, of building something lasting. The thought of opening that door to Ty again, of letting him back into her world, was terrifying. Yet, as she stood there, something deep inside her told her that she couldn't ignore him. Not now, not when he needed her. But could she really make the journey to him? Could she leave behind everything that had become her life? Amy walked over to the door, looking out toward the barn. It was there in that place where she had spent countless hours with the horses, where so many memories with Ty had been made. The barn was more than just a building to her. It was a symbol of everything she had worked through, everything she had rebuilt since Ty left. And now, standing there, looking out at it, she felt like she was standing at a crossroads, The horses were her escape. The ranch was her escape. Ty had always been something else. Something she couldn't just forget, no matter how much she tried. Amy's thoughts swirled as the sun continued to rise, casting a golden light across the land. She could hear the faint sounds of the animals' birds, rustling leaves, the occasional neigh from one of the horses. The world outside was still turning, still moving forward. And yet here she was, frozen in place, unable to make the choice that would set everything in motion. She knew what she had to do, didn't she? Her breath caught in her chest as she stepped toward the phone again. I can't walk away. Not from him. Not from the person I used to be when we were together. It wasn't about fixing the past. It was about figuring out if there was a way forward. Amy's hand reached out, her fingers brushing the screen of the phone. She stared at it, her mind racing through 1,000 different scenarios. Would Ty be the same person he had been before? Would their connection still be there? Could they pick up the pieces of their old life? Or would everything they had once shared crumble beneath the weight of everything that had changed? The phone seemed to pulse in her hand, almost as if it were alive, urging her to make a decision. But for Amy, this was no simple choice. She wasn't just deciding whether to help Ty. She was deciding whether to bring him back into her life, whether she was ready for the consequences of that decision UST brought. It all crashing back into her life. Amy didn't expect it to be this hard. She had told herself that answering Ty's call wouldn't change anything. She had convinced herself that she had moved on, that the past was just that, the past. But as she sat there, the phone pressed to her ear, waiting for Ty to answer. She realized just how deeply those old feelings ran. The tension in her chest tightened, and for a moment, she wondered if the weight of everything of the years, the heartache, the distance was more than she could carry. When the call went through, Ty's voice came through clear, but the urgency in it caught Amy off guard. Amy, I'm glad you called back. Ty's voice was softer than she remembered. It was the kind of tone he used when he was exhausted, defeated. It made her heart ache. I didn't know who else to turn to. For a split second, Amy almost wished she hadn't picked up. She didn't know if she was strong enough to handle what was about to come. She had spent so long pretending that the past didn't matter, burying the pieces of her life that had once been wrapped around Ty like vines. But now, with his voice in her ear, she could feel those vines growing again. Pulling her back in, the ranch was still there, as steady and strong as ever. The horses needed her. The ranch needed her. And yet in this moment, nothing else mattered but the raw, painful connection she felt to the man on the other end of the line. He was a part of her, always had been. Could she turn her back on that? Amy, Ty's voice again, breaking through her thoughts. Are you still there? She blinked, realizing that she had been silent for too long. Yeah, I'm here, she whispered, her heart pounding louder than her words. She could feel the tightness in her throat, the overwhelming flood of emotions threatening to spill over. I don't know where to start, Ty said, his voice wavering just a little. But I need you to understand something. I didn't leave because I didn't care. I left because I thought I was doing what was best for us. I didn't want to drag you into what I was going through. Amy closed her eyes. I knew that, she thought bitterly. She had spent so many sleepless nights wondering what had happened, why he had left without so much as an explanation. He had always been distant, but that day when he packed up and walked away without a word, it had felt like the end of everything they had built. She exhaled slowly, her fingers gripping the phone tightly. Ty, you left, without telling me what was going on, without giving me the chance to help. You didn't even say goodbye. There was a long pause. For a moment, Amy wondered if he had hung up, if he had retreated again, the way he always did when the world became too much for him. But then, his voice returned, softer now, filled with a raw vulnerability that made her heart ache even more. I know. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I didn't give you the chance to understand what I didn't realize, what I couldn't. See, back then, was that the hardest part of leaving wasn't just leaving you, it was leaving myself behind too. And I don't know if I can fix it alone. Amy's heart skipped a beat. Fix it alone? What did that even mean? And how was she supposed to fix it for him when she could barely fix herself? She wanted to scream, to say the words she had kept bottled up for so long. Why didn't you trust me? But she didn't. Instead, she kept listening, feeling as though the ground beneath her feet was crumbling. I've messed up, Amy, Ty continued, his voice heavy with regret. But I'm asking for your help now, because I don't know who else to turn to. I can't do this alone. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. She could hear it in every word, every pause. He was pleading with her, but she could sense something more to vulnerability. Ty had always been the one who pushed people away, always the one who kept everything inside. But now, in this moment, she could hear the cracks in his walls. Amy squeezed her eyes shut, trying to push away the memories. I'm not the same person I was when he left, she reminded herself. She had built her life back together, brick by brick. With her own two hands, she wasn't the young girl who had been left behind, who had been torn apart by his departure. She had found her strength again. She had found a way to live without him. But the truth was, even now, it still hurt. Even now, the thought of losing him again, of never seeing him again, cut deeper than she cared to. The plea was simple. The words were few. But they carried more weight than any of the grand promises they had made when things had been easy. And as much as Amy wanted to turn away, as much as she wanted to hold on to the life she had worked so hard to rebuild, she couldn't ignore the pull of his voice, the ache in her chest. This was Ty, the man she had loved, the man who had walked away. But could she really walk back into his world? Could she risk everything she had built? Her heart told her one thing, but her mind told her something entirely different. She closed her eyes again, the decision pressing on her like 1,000 pounds of weight. She knew what she had to do. Amy stood in the center of the kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear, and for a moment she felt as if the world outside had ceased to exist. The steady hum of life at Heartland, the rustle of the wind through the trees, the soft neigh of the horses had all faded away. The only thing that mattered in that moment was Ty's voice, heavy with regret, reaching her from across miles of distance. Please, Amy, I need you. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She could hear the desperation in his voice, the rawness that only came when someone was truly broken. It was the same voice she had once fallen in love with. The same voice that had always managed to make her feel both safe and unsure all at once. That voice now carried the weight of everything between them, the love, the loss, the unanswered questions. Her grip tightened on the phone. The emotional tug-of-war inside her was unbearable. She had told herself that Ty was the past. She had built a life without him, a life that she had come to cherish, even if it wasn't exactly what she had envisioned when she was younger. She had learned to love Heartland again, to find purpose in the ranch, to care for the horses, and to build a future that was solely hers. But now, Ty's call had shattered that illusion. The door she thought she had closed had creaked open once more, and Amy wasn't sure she was ready to step back through it. She glanced around the kitchen, her eyes landing on the table where they used to sit together, making plans and dreaming of the future. That future, it seemed, had never come to pass. They had dreamed of a life together, of running Heartland side by side, of growing old together. But somewhere along the way, their paths had diverged. Now, after all this time, she was being asked to pick up the pieces again. Amy let out a shaky breath, her fingers still gripping the phone, as she walked toward the window. The sky was a soft shade of gray, clouds rolling in like a warning. It felt like the calm before the storm. She had been through so much, so many sleepless nights, so many quiet moments of grief after Ty had left, but somehow she had made it through. She had made herself whole again, or at least she thought she had. But now, with his voice haunting her, it felt like everything she had worked for could unravel in an instant. Was it worth it? She asked herself. Was it worth risking everything? To go back to him? The answer was a bitter one that made her heart twist. She had always wondered what could have been. She had spent countless hours thinking about him, imagining how different their lives could have been if things had turned out differently. But now, she had to decide, was it enough to live in the what-ifs, or did she need to confront the reality of what Ty had become? Her mind raced. She thought of the ranch, of everything she had worked to build, She thought of her horses, her responsibilities, the quiet peace she had finally found after so much turmoil. It had taken so long to get to this place, so long. To finally feel like she was in control of her life again, could she really risk that? But then she thought of Ty, sitting somewhere alone with no one to turn to. The man she had once loved had come back, and now, for the first time in months, he was asking for help. He'd always carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, and Amy knew that if she didn't help him now, he might not make it through. She could feel the pressure building in her chest, the tightness of her breath, the war within her heart. She had always been the one who helped others, the one who put everyone else first. But now, the question was, could she afford to help Ty without losing herself in the process? Could she face the possibility of opening her heart to him again, knowing that the past might repeat itself? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden noise, a soft knock on the door, followed by the sound of footsteps on the porch. Amy turned, startled, and for a moment, she considered ignoring it, retreating into herself. But something told her that this was a sign, a reminder that the world outside was still turning, that life would continue no matter what decision she made. She took one final glance at the phone, still pressed against her ear, as Ty's words echoed in her mind. The pull of the past was strong, but she had learned long ago that the past could never truly be controlled. The only thing she could control now was how she moved forward. Her hand slowly lowered the phone. She had made her decision. "I'll come," she said, her voice quieter than she expected. "But Ty, you need to understand something I can't. Go back to what we were. I'm not the same person anymore. And I'm not sure I can be the person you need me to be, but I'll help you. I'll help you through this." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Amy wondered if she had said the wrong thing. But then Ty spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Amy. You don't know how much this means." She hung up the phone. Amy took a deep breath, letting the gravity of the situation wash over her. She had made her choice. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was ready to face what was coming, no matter what it meant for her future. As she walked toward the door, the world outside seemed to breathe again. The clouds that had gathered in the sky seemed to part, letting the light shine through, just as the future, uncertain and unpredictable, now lay before her. The moment Amy stepped outside, the weight of her decision settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. The cool morning air cut through the warmth of the house, and she breathed deeply, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. Her feet carried her across the familiar ground of Heartland, but nothing felt familiar anymore. Not after the phone call. Not after hearing Ty's voice, filled with vulnerability and pain. Reaching across the miles to her, her hands still tingled from holding the phone, and her heart beat erratically as she tried to process the reality of what she had just agreed to. She was going to find Ty. She was going to face him. And no matter how much she had told herself that she had moved on, that she had learned to live without him, a part of her still ached with the knowledge that this was going to change everything. Amy turned toward the barn, the place where everything had started, the place that had once been filled with laughter, the sound of Ty's voice echoing off the walls as they worked together. The barn had seen so many moments, so many victories and heartaches between them. It had been their shared space, their sanctuary. But now it felt like a reminder of a time that was both cherished and painful. She paused at the barn doors, running her hand over the rough wood, the scent of hay and horses filling her senses. Was she ready to walk back into that world? Answer was a tangled mess of emotions: fear, hope, love, and the ache of things left unsaid. She had promised herself that she wouldn't go back to the past, that she would keep moving forward. But now, Ty's desperate plea had thrown that all into question. The promise she had made to herself was being tested in the most brutal way. She had done this before. She had pulled herself out of the darkness. She had put the pieces of her life back together after Ty had left. She had found a way to thrive again, to be her own person. But this felt different. The future, once a steady and certain path, now felt like it was teetering on the edge of something unknown. Amy shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. No more doubting. No more wondering. This is happening. I've made my choice. The decision was made. She was going to Ty. She was going to help him, even though part of her was terrified of what that meant. She couldn't ignore him. She couldn't walk away when he was asking for her help. As much as she had tried to bury those feelings, as much as she had tried to build a future without him, the truth was clear. She still cared. With a final glance at the ranch, Amy turned and walked toward her truck. The drive ahead of her would be long. But it wasn't just the miles that lay between them. It was the years of history, of hurt, of things left unsaid. The air in the truck felt thick as she started the engine and pulled. Out of Heartland's driveway, the road ahead was uncertain. She didn't know what she would find when she reached Ty. She didn't know if he was the same man she had once loved, or if he had changed in ways that were irreversible. But one thing was clear: she couldn't leave him in his time of need. As the landscape blurred outside the truck window, Amy thought about the life she had built without Ty. Her work at the ranch, horses, the people who had become like family to her, all of it had filled the space that Ty had once occupied. Now, none of it felt quite enough. Not when Ty's voice still lingered in her ears. Not when she was about to face the hardest decision she had ever made. The road twisted ahead, leading her through hills and valleys she knew well, but it felt like a journey into the unknown. The closer she got, the more her heart raced. Had no idea what would happen when she saw Ty again. She didn't know what he would look like, what he had become, or how the past would fit into the person they were now. But she couldn't turn back. Not now, not after everything. Ty had been a part of her, a big part. He had shaped the woman she had become, for better or for worse. And now, despite everything, she was going to face him. She was going to help him. The more she thought about it, the more Amy realized just how much she had been holding on to memories. Old wounds, promises that she couldn't keep. But now, standing on the brink of what could be a turning point, she knew that in order to move forward, she had to let go. Let go of the anger. Let go of the fear. Let go of the doubt. Her phone buzzed on the seat beside her, snapping her back to the present. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Lou, asking how things were going at the ranch and if she was okay. Amy typed back quickly, telling her everything was fine, that she was just taking care of something important. She didn't feel like explaining it all right now. She didn't have the words to make sense of everything that was happening inside her. As the miles passed, the horizon grew darker, and the night began to settle in. It felt like the right time for a change, the right time to face what had been haunting her all this time. Amy wasn't sure what awaited her when she reached Ty. She didn't know if they could ever pick up where they left off, if there was even a possibility of finding something resembling the love they once shared. But she did know one thing: this wasn't just about Ty anymore. It was about her, too. About finding closure, about understanding the past, and about choosing to face it with an open heart. She couldn't predict the future, but in this moment, all she could do was drive. 1 mile at a time toward a decision that had already changed everything. Amy's truck rumbled steadily down the winding road, the familiar landscape of Heartland, slowly disappearing behind her. Every mile seemed to stretch into infinity, but with each passing moment, the unease in her chest only grew. The distance between her and the ranch now felt like a chasm, pulling her further from everything she had worked so hard to build. It wasn't just the miles that separated her from Heartland. It was the years of memories, pain, and unfinished business. The road ahead was uncertain, but the weight of her decision pressed on her with every turn of the wheels as she approached. The area Ty had mentioned in the call, the sky had darkened, the deep indigo of night descending on the earth. The world around her seemed to grow quieter, more intense, as though nature itself was holding its breath. She could feel the tension building within her, the anticipation of what lay ahead. She was so close, yet everything about this felt surreal. As though she was walking into a storm she couldn't control, Ty had asked for help. He had called her out of the blue, dragged her back into his world, a world she had tried so hard to leave behind. Amy thought she was ready for whatever came next. But now, with every mile closer to him, doubt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. What if she wasn't enough to help him? What if the distance between them, the years apart, had already done its damage? Her mind raced through the memories, the good ones, the painful ones, the days when it seemed like nothing could tear them apart, the nights when they had held on to each other through their deepest fears. But those memories were not the present. The Ty she had known was not the Ty who had called her today. People change, time changes things, and she wasn't sure if they could ever go back to the way they were as she rounded the last curve. Amy saw the faint outline of a cabin in the distance, the lights flickering like a beacon in the dark. She knew this place. It was where Ty had often stayed when he needed space, when he needed time away from everything. It felt like a lifetime ago, a different chapter of their story, and now here she was, about to walk into it again. Amy parked her truck by the cabin, the engine humming softly as she sat there for a moment, unsure. She felt small in the face of this decision, a single person standing at the crossroads of her past and her future. Her heart thudded loudly in her chest, and her hands were clammy against the steering wheel. She didn't know what to expect. When she opened that door, didn't know what she would find when she finally saw Ty face to face again. The truck doors creaked open as Amy stepped out into the cold night air. Her breath came out in puffs of white steam, mingling with the crispness of the evening. The silence of the world around her seemed almost unnatural, too still for comfort. With one last deep breath, she made her way to the front door of the cabin, her footsteps slow and deliberate. She reached for the door handle. But as she stood there, a rush of emotions hit her. She could almost feel the years of longing, of questions unanswered, of words left unsaid. Could she forgive him for leaving? Could she forgive herself for not knowing how to move on, before she could second-guess herself? Amy knocked softly on the door. The sound was almost too loud in the quiet night. There was a brief moment of silence before she heard the faint sound of footsteps inside, slow but deliberate. Her heart skipped a beat as the door creaked open, revealing the man she had once loved standing in front of her. Ty's eyes met hers, and for a moment, everything else faded away. He looked the same, yet so different, older, worn, the weight of whatever he had been through written across his face. The years had been hard on him too. His eyes, however, still held that familiar intensity, that silent plea that she had heard in his voice earlier. "Amy," he said, his voice hoarse, almost as if speaking her name was an effort. His expression was a mixture of relief and guilt, his hands hanging at his sides as if unsure whether to reach out for her. I didn't know if you'd come." Amy didn't know what to say. All the words she had prepared, all the things she thought she would feel in this moment seemed to disappear. All she could see was the man standing in front of her, the man who had called her, who had brought her here. And suddenly, the weight of everything became clear. This wasn't just about the past. This was about the present. And maybe, just maybe, it could be about the future too. "I'm here," Amy said softly, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "I'm here because you asked for help, but whatever this is, we need to figure it out. We can't go back to what was." Ty nodded slowly, his face falling with the understanding that she wasn't coming back to the past. She wasn't coming back to the boy he had been, to the life they once shared. But that was okay. They both knew that. "I know," he whispered. "I don't want to go back either. I just need help, Amy. I don't know what I'm doing anymore." Her heart softened at the rawness in his voice, the vulnerability that he rarely showed. Maybe that was the first step facing the truth together. Amy took a step forward, closing the distance between them, her resolve strengthening. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. They had both changed. They both had their scars, their histories, but that didn't mean they couldn't find a way forward, whatever that looked like. "You're not alone in this," she said quietly, offering him a small, uncertain smile. "But we'll figure it out, one step at a time." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Amy felt a flicker of hope. Not the kind of hope that came with promises or illusions of the past, but the kind that came with the possibility of moving forward together, in whatever way that might be.